Good afternoon. The Electricity Minister, Kgosientsho Ramamokgopa, says it's going to be a tough few days. Likely, as you saw, we'll be at stage 5 until tomorrow morning, then stage 3, and then stage 4. Meanwhile, Ramamokgopa saying one of the major problems at several power stations is the issue of boiler tube leaks. As I understand it, these tubes are often carrying, I suppose, superheated steam. It's something that needs to be managed very, very carefully. Vally Padayachee is a former executive manager at Eskom, a former city power executive, and also currently chair of the Committee of the National Specifications Association. Vally, good afternoon to you, and thank you for your time. Firstly, a boiler tube leak. When this happens, we're talking about a massive tube that someone actually has to climb into to fix. Is that right?
Good afternoon, Stephen, and a very good afternoon to your listeners as well, and thank you for having me back. I think, let me start off by saying I've done a lot of these boiler tube leak repairs in my career, both in the oil refineries and in Eskom while I was there. And maybe I should just start off for the benefit of the listeners, is just to say, give them a perspective of what a boiler is. A boiler is like a kettle.
Yeah.
You have at home that boils water, except obviously this is a massive kettle that boils water, but using coal as the heat. And the tubes that you see in there has water running through it, and you heat the water. And just to give you a perspective, a typical large boiler, like Medupi and Kusile, etc., if you had to unpack the tubes and lay them on a road, it's about 648 kilometers. So you can go from here to Durban and back to Maritzburg. That's how long that is. Anyway, tube leaks in a refinery, in a power station, is a refinery manager and a power station manager worst nightmare. Because although you can get it managed to a reasonable level, you actually don't have too much of control in managing the factors that cause the tube leaks. And there are a number of factors for that. I mean, the more common ones are corrosion, erosion, fly ash erosion, intense heat, etc. that causes that. And the problem with that is that if you have a tube leak, it comes out, the steam comes out at a huge temperature, could range from 1,000 degrees centigrade to 1,600 degrees centigrade, and huge pressure, right? And the danger of that is that if you don't catch it in time, it will cause damage to other tubes in a boiler. And why I'm saying it's a power station manager's worst nightmare, it's one of the biggest causes of load losses and decrease in the energy availability factor. I'm using very simple terms here. So if you look at EAF being at 55%, and you have these number of tube leaks, we had 9 last week, then it will continue to drop your EAF, for example. And Stephen, it's a major event, although it's a maintenance issue, it's a major event in a power station when you have a tube leak, right? Because it requires highly skilled, highly competent people, right from artisan level, right to the project leader, and I've been there, as I say, to get it fixed. And if you don't fix the one tube correctly or properly, because you also do a number of temporary repairs and final repairs, then the problem just roller coast. And that is why I'm saying Eskom is sitting in a situation where these tube leaks could recur, and they just don't have the environment around it to completely arrest it.
What causes them? And I imagine there's several things that cause them. You mentioned corrosion, but we've seen many times claims that poor quality coal is being substituted for high quality coal. Can that be a problem? I mean, in some cases, rocks were being substituted for coal. Can that cause a tube leak in some way?
Well, I would say indirectly, because being a bit more technical, if you get different types of coal, you get different CVs, so your eating coefficients change, so you could get an unreasonable eating sink in that area. And then you also get what we call fly ash which if you can imagine, it's like a sandpaper, which runs, and when this thing blows into a boiler, we call it tramp air. It's air that's not required, that leaks in, and it carries this ash from the furnace, and it's like sandpaper that runs against the boiler tubes, and it literally sandpapers the walls, and that causes the erosion and, of course, leaks, a major cause.
So, I mean, we've been told, for example, that people are stealing the high-quality coal, and they're using low-quality coal. They substitute the low-quality coal. Could that be a factor in what we're seeing this weekend?
I won't say it's a major cause, because generally the coal that you burn at a power station, and it's designed for that, you burn the worst coal in the world.
Yeah.
Actually, in Letabo, where I worked, it burns the worst coal in the world. You have very low CVs. But it's actually designed for that. And it's cheap coal, which actually makes the business case for a power station.
Is there a problem with the design of some of these tubes? And I mean, I know for Medupi and Kgosientsho, they both had issues with their designs. Is that a factor?
Well, let's put it this way. The design of a tube, although it looks very simple, I mean, you say simple, but the engineering that goes into it to design it, the material selection of the tubes, the wall thickness, the thermal coefficiency, the heat transfer, because there's actually two processes in a boiler. You get the combustion process at the furnace level, where the burners and you burn the coal, and you get the heat transfer. And it's so finicky, Stephen, that those two processes have to be synchronized more than 100% for you to get an excellent combustion heat transfer process in that whole system.
And I suppose you have one tube where one part of the tube could be at 500 degrees Celsius and another part of the same tube not far away at 1,000 degrees Celsius. You've got to manage, when you talk about heat transfer, you're talking about that. That whole process has to be managed very carefully.
Well, let me answer it this way. I mean, you should be having a uniform temperature, because we're talking technically through convection currents and radiation. But when you have, say, lagging from the wall of a boiler that falls into a burner, then you get the flame, we call it the flame impingement. So the flame gets impinged at an angle. So it's like having a blowtorch against a pipe with water running in it. And you can imagine the concentrated heat. And if you don't pick that up, and this is part of normal maintenance, which normally happens in it, and I'm hoping it continues to happen. If you don't pick those little things up, they'll lead to major issues. And Stephen, before I forget the point, to add to the power station manager's nightmare is not so much a tube leak, it's the repeated tube leaks. You can have a tube leak now, and that's why if you don't repair it properly, right, that could lead on to other tube leaks, because the area around it is not being secured technically.
Fikile Mbalula, the Secretary General of the ANC, he went on X on Saturday and claimed this was sabotage. He went on Twitter on Saturday and said it was sabotage. He spoke at a rally in KwaZulu-Natal yesterday in which he said that this was sabotage and that the ANC and the state government needed to better protect its installations. How do you view that? I mean, this would seem, from what you say, unlikely to be sabotage, a tube leak. Well,
let me answer it this way. I don't have the evidence at my position to make that call. But from a technical perspective, it's not untoward where you could have a number of tube leaks at one time. I mean, we had 9 in the last couple of days. And suddenly you have a drop in it, and you pick up more tube leaks. But, and this could also increase, Stephen, if Eskom doesn't get a handle on tube leaks. And as I say, you've got to have a top-notch crew, maintenance crew, and I see the minister is talking about, which I know they're using OEMs. But my fear is that the OEMs of today, meaning the original equipment manufacturers, may not be the same OEMs that we had years ago, because they've also lost a lot of the skills and competencies. My take on this, Stephen, as somebody that's worked in boilers, done repairs and led project teams on this, is that this could be the continued Achilles heel for Eskom. I would say you need to get a SWAT team. Get a tube leak SWAT team, even if it means bringing them from overseas on a short-term basis until we get the tube leak sorted out. And get them, and to use the proverbial word, deployed into the various coal-fired power stations so that they are able to arrest this problem about tube leaks. Because my worry is that repeated tube leaks. And you know, and I don't want to sound arrogant about this, in the old days, when you had a tube leak at 2 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday, you as the power station manager, engineering manager, and your crew, you started the process of repair at 5 minutes past 2 in the morning.
Yes.
And the longest part of that let's call it critical path repair is to cool.
Yes.
And the faster you cool it, the quicker you can get it repaired. And I'm hoping that that's still being done.
How do you cool it down if it's at 1,000 degrees Celsius?
No. Well, talking technically, you use what we call forced draft fans. You literally use big blows, artificial blows, in the boiler itself, and you blow and blow. And there's no set time. If you're lucky, you get it done quickly, and that's a safety issue.
You can't send someone into something like that at 200 degrees. And Vally, so the Minister and Eskom seem confident that things will get back to normal by sort of Wednesday. I think normal is probably stage 2 load shedding nowadays. But we're going to have this problem again, from what you say. We're likely to have tube leak problems again.
Yes, tube leaks, if they're not properly managed, tube leak repairs are not properly managed, they will recur and recur. Because as I say, it's not where one component gets repaired and it's done. If you don't repair that correctly, then you'll get repeat failures. And you've got 648 kilometers of tubes.
Sure.
And that could be a serious problem for what we call load losses and drop in availability.
Vally Padayachee, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate it. Former executive manager at Eskom, also at City Power in Johannesburg, and then also chair of the NRS Association at the moment. Really do appreciate the time.